Good evening, brothers and sisters. Tonight will be my third session with you. And the topic for tonight is Samma Ditti, or you commonly understand as right understanding, the first of the 8 part. In fact, I should have done this with you yesterday, and what I did yesterday, today, but because of the change in schedule, I couldn't get this on time yesterday. Now, I think most of you are quite familiar with this word, Samma Ditti. Don't let the Pali word frighten you. By the way, my notes start on page 2. Page 1 is a common page I give for all the 8 noble parts. It's in case it's a separate essay, so it's page 2. Now, I think in most of the modules they teach for beginners, they will say the first of the Eightfold Noble Path is right understanding, isn't it? In Pali it is Sammaditi. It's all the Pali and the English words are there. Now the traditional translation in most of our early books on Buddhism will explain it as right understanding. It's in page 2. I will use the notes as a structure. I mean, it's for you to read, but I will simplify the notes very much. This is for you to take home when you have time to digest. But in the class, I will simplify what I want to say in a very simple manner. But today, as time goes on, you'll find that this term, Sammaditi, people are beginning to use a slightly different word we call view. They use the word view, a right view, rather than understanding. It's more than understanding, a view. But Venerable Dr. Punaji, he prefers to use another terminology for this. He calls it the harmonious perspective. Well, view and perspective are quite similar in a way. That's why it's right view is more suitable than understanding. And this is a very important part for you to understand. This is the beginning of the path, so it's very important. Now, you see, normally, if you go a little bit deeper into the Noble Eightfold Path, you will find that we rather not talk of what is right or wrong. We rather not talk about what is right or wrong, because by doing that, we can become quite rigid in our views. Bhante Punaji prefers to use the term harmonious. He prefers to use the term harmonious because harmonious means a view that does not come into conflict with anybody's view. You see, so this is a very important topic for student of Buddhism, because when you study this and you understand this, the first part, you'll find that a lot of things you do, you will not come into conflict with your family, your friends, and your colleagues in work. By the way, you got to understand a view and a perspective is slightly different from a commandment. They are slightly different. In Buddhism, we talk about perspective, the way we look at things. As I told you, the way we are guided by the precepts and the way we look at things. Whereas in some religion, they are guided by commandments. Commandments are traditionally regarded as the word of God. So you have to obey the words of God. If you don't obey the word of God, that means you are going against the wishes of the Creator. Whereas the view is you have to see things and come to a certain conclusion. What is your view? All right. Now, normally, when you talk about right view, we do not talk about what is right or what is wrong. We get into a lot of argument in this. From the Buddhist point of view, the Buddha prefers to talk about what is good and what is bad. You see, if somebody likes to talk about what is truth, and if he holds on to the truth, then his view can become very dogmatic. He becomes narrow-minded, and he gets into argument with other people. So you see, normally that's why avoid from talking what is right and wrong, but we prefer to say what is good or bad, so that we do not get into an argument with people. Then the Buddha's stand has always been harmonious. He makes sure there's harmony in his view. He likes, I'll give you an example, to speak about what is good and bad rather than what is true. You see, many religions talk about what is true. And they say, the God, the Creator, created the whole world. Or, as I said, they say, so-and-so is the Son of God. These are very strong statements. They say, this is what it says in the religious book. So it becomes a very strong statement, and they hold on to that statement. So if you hold on to that statement, it becomes dogmatic. Your views become narrow-minded. Now, in the case of the Buddhist text, if you read the words of the Buddha in the suttas, it always begins with, thus have I heard. It's related by Ananda. So the words in the suttas are what Ananda heard from the Buddha. He may have heard wrongly, so he does not claim it to be the absolute truth. So usually if somebody asks me, like even here, question time, they ask me, what do you think? I will say, this is what I understand from reading the text, and this is what I think. I may be wrong. I didn't say this is what it should be. When you do that, from the religious point of view, especially in Buddhism, you are actually protecting the truth. You do not give an outright statement but you say, it's my opinion or what I understand. So this is how we avoid conflicts. We avoid conflicts by taking this approach. Now, a very important sutta, which most of you will know, is the Kalama Sutta. No? The Kalama Sutta is supposed to be the doctrine of free will, where the Buddha told the disciples or his followers how to choose a religion. That's the traditional way. There are certain things you see for yourself. If they are right and true, you follow them. Now, actually, if you look deeper into the Kalama Sutta, it's more than just that. By the way, just for the newer people, I'll let you know what is the Kalama Sutta like. You see, there was a group of people called the Kalama who were very intellectual people. And their town was usually visited by a lot of philosophers and scholars. And every scholar that visited the town, and when they preach to the people, they will say, this is the view, and this is the truth. So when people are so strong in their views, they realize that when 3 scholars came, 3 scholars were giving their views and saying, this is the truth. So they became a bit confused. So they decided to approach the Buddha and asked him, can you explain to us how to choose a religion or how to find the truth? The people actually asked him, what is the truth? But if you read the whole sutta, you find that the Buddha's reply was, what is good, he told them, not what is true. Although he told them, do not believe certain things until you see for yourself, you reason for yourself. Do not believe in the books you see for yourself. Do not believe in your teacher you see for yourself. But ultimately, at the end of the sutta, it says, you see for yourself. If your actions are useful and helpful to society and does not do harm to society, go on, continue with it. If your actions are negative, as a result, stop doing it. That's all. So he advised the people, if what you do is good, carry on. If it is no good, don't do it. It should be good for yourself, good for others, and good for both. It should not be just good for you, not good for him, and so forth. Now, I took this definition and a little bit from Bhante Punaji's book, Return to Tranquility. In fact, tonight, this is his slot. He says here, harmonious perspective. Page 3, the first one. Page 3. Samaditthi is the perspective that brings about harmony within and without. It brings harmony for yourself and harmony between you and others. Not just, it's no good if it's good for others, but bad for you. It should be good for you and good for others. And then he continues to say, the conflict within is the conflict between one's emotional impulses and one's sense of value. It's a conflict between the thinking and the emotional part. We all have that conflict in life. I will mention that later. This conflict between our emotions and our thinking. And then the conflict outside, without, is the conflict between one's emotional impulses and the physical and the social reality outside. I will explain this as I go on. I will explain this. Now, in his book, he mentioned these two conflicts: the outer conflict and the inner conflict. The two conflicts, outer conflict and the inner conflict. You look at the second paragraph there I gave you. This one, they are all listed there. Now, the outer conflicts are the conflicts between the pleasure-seeking emotions. I told you, sense pleasure we are seeking. The conflict between that and the physical. That's the reality of life. Everything is impermanent. Seeking permanence in an impermanent reality. And also with society reality. That means your needs and the needs of another person in society may be different. So these are conflict. You see, the outer conflict occurs when the search for pleasure comes into conflict with physical environment itself and with other people. Now, the inner conflict, as I told you, is the conflict between your emotion and your rational thinking. Now, I will go on. Now, all this explain why there is a conflict and there is a necessity. When you understand this inner and outer conflict, you will understand how to cultivate a harmonious perspective in life. Everything. You will understand life better once you understand these two conflicts in life. Now, let's look at the outer conflict. Now, the first conflict I have already told you is what? We are going after sense pleasure. We want this sense pleasure to be forever with us. So, in other words, we are going after permanence. Permanence. But the reality of the world is everything is impermanence. So, we want permanence in an impermanent world. So, it's not very realistic. It's irrational. And when this conflict comes up, we become unhappy. We become unhappy. That is the first type of conflict between you and the outside world. Now, the second one is also quite similar, but it's also something like you want a permanent situation with an impermanent reality. That is, you do not want to grow old. You see, this one arises because of the thought, I am, arises. I am, or the self. Because there is a self, or you exist, you'll find that old age, sickness, and death, which occurs to everybody, is a reality. Again, we cannot face this reality. And because of that, we become very unhappy. We come into conflict with the world. It's slightly different. The first one is, we want things to remain forever, everything, but we can't. The second one, we want ourselves to remain forever, but we can't. That's why the Buddha says, this is the arising of dukkha. Getting old and going to die. That's the other reality. We can't come to terms with it. Now, so what some people do is, when they can't come to terms with this reality, they go into a different dream world. They call it escapism. They try to imagine there is a God. Then they pray to the God to protect them, to give them special powers. They pray to supernatural power. Not supernormal, supernatural. That means God. And they ask for this and ask for that. From the Buddhist point of view, it will not work. Because from Buddhism point of view, they do not believe in supernatural powers, but they believe in supernormal. Yes. Then, so what is the Buddhist solution? The Buddhist solution is not to pray to these supernatural powers, the external powers to protect us, to give us our good health, long life and everything. But actually, the Buddhist way is to transform your mind. Change your way of thinking. Again, it's meditation. That's the word. Mental cultivation. So you see, if you want to cultivate a harmonious perspective, you have to learn to change your thinking. That means you change your mind. Change it. That's the Buddhist solution to it. And earlier on, I told you, last lesson, you see, the search for this pleasure, we are all pleasure-seeking people. We usually get so engrossed with sense pleasure that when we get this sense pleasure, we always want to say, it's mine. We try to protect it. And once you start to protect it, you get more and more unhappy because ultimately you find that what you try to protect does not become yours. They change. Even your health, your body, my body can change when you're old. And when you're old, from sense pleasure and calling it mine, and when you're old, the pain becomes so unbearable that sometimes some people say, I want to die. And thinking death will end also. You don't want that. So you see, the craving for sensual pleasure becomes the hatred for pain. You want to get rid of it. That's page 3. Yeah? Now, I'm still talking about inner conflicts. One more. And then the next conflict is sometimes what we do or what we want can come into conflict with what other people want. Page 4, second paragraph. So we must understand. We cannot always say what we want. We must also understand other people's point of view, see other people's point of view, what people want. So, if you are able to do that, you'll find that you will have less conflict with people, especially your wife. You look at it. You realize that, well, he has got a view, I have got a view. We can be more flexible in our views. Now, the Buddha is very good at it. The Buddha does not hold on to just one view. The Buddha is able to see different views. He can see your view. He has his own view. He knows the other person's view, but he does not hold on to one view. He is able to see all views. That's why he is like a psychotherapist. He knows how to deal with different people with different mentality. Now, I would like you to look at the last paragraph in page 4. I'm making it very simple tonight. And the last paragraph in page 4, you see, the two quotations, how the Buddha handled people. On one occasion, the Buddha was asked by Gandapani, a very proud Brahmin, who's supposed to be Brahmins are very intellectual people. And he went to the Buddha and asked the Buddha, "Sir, what do you teach? And what are your views?" This one is very important. The Buddha replied, my view is the view that does not come in conflict with anyone in the world. That is my view. So you see, he gave a very interesting view. You see, my view does not come into conflict with anyone in the world. Then there was another occasion. He was asked a similar question, and his reply to the question was, I do not dispute with the world, but the world dispute with me. This happens usually in a religious argument sometimes. The philosophers or the religious teachers say, this is my view, this is right, this is what. You say. He will say, I do not dispute with you. But the world dispute with us. Just as the other one, I do not change people. I change myself. That is the way towards cultivating the harmonious perspective. How can you have harmony if you want to change people rather than to change yourself? This is what I do, you do it. Sometimes if you have been bosses for too long, I think this happens when you go home. Everybody has to follow your instruction. This is my view. This is how it should be done. You don't even ask the other person, is there another way? Become autocratic. So rather than to look at just right understanding, I've taken a slightly different angle on samadhi to describe. It's a more important is a view or a perspective that brings harmony to other people. Now the inner conflicts are more simple. As I told you, it's the thinking versus the emotion, the inner conflicts. Thinking versus the emotion. Now the Buddha did use a few words for the terms they use. Usually, you see, the thinking part is aware of the realities. But the emotional part is usually blind. And when it comes into conflict, as it's usually what happens, the emotional part will win if you are not trained. You just see a lot of children, especially the younger ones, the emotions will take the better of a person. Now the Buddha called the thinking mind, mano. I gave it to you there. That one you can keep it until later when you are comfortable with Pali words, then you see. And he calls the emotional side the citta, a mano and the citta. The thinking mind and the emotional mind. So this happens very often in our life, among children, among adults even. I give you some example, like among children. You see, when a young child wants to do something, especially a kid, he doesn't know the danger of it. The emotion, the impulses, is the drive for the action. He plays with matches, or he jumps from a height. All these are because he does not think, because the thinking is too late when he gets burned or he breaks his leg. You see, so even sometimes when the person wants to do something, the thinking part say no, the emotional part say yes, and after some time you find that the emotions we are carried away usually. We don't think rationally. Now, even in adults, we sometimes do not think rationally when we become emotional. Good example is sometimes when we are in trouble, we look for all sorts of external help. We hope this person will help. We go to this person, we go to all sorts of super bomos, we go to what we think, rather than taking the right way, thinking in the right way, and taking it. Even when you are sick, you sometimes, instead of just going straight for medical, you try and get all sorts of divine intervention sometimes. It's because men are insecure. They always hope that there are, in fact, divine intervention when they are in trouble. Well, in Buddhism, it does not believe in that. So now even, you see, the emotion versus the thinking. Another incident is like sometimes, even doctors, some doctors can be very religious. On Sunday, they will go to their wherever place they go, they pray, and they ask maybe for to whatever they want. To a Buddhist, that's not a very rational thing. But when they perform a surgery, that is the rational mind, not the praying. Praying alone will not help. But of course, some people will say, well, it may sometimes in some way. So, or usually they say, you think one way, but you do another way sometimes. Now that is very common. Now the other one that happens to us in our emotional, sometimes we get into this conflict is because we have got conscience and we have got emotions. And the conscience will always come out after we have done it. The conscience will come up. But there are sometimes this conscience do not come out immediately after you have done it. It comes up much later. It comes up much later. Actually, it is a conscience versus your thinking. You see, I give you two examples. Now, if you are brought out in a very liberal way, when you are when you're a young boy, you can do all sorts of things. It's all right. You drink, you party, and then you see, your emotions will ask you to do all these things. And then the conscience will come after that. Oh, but your conscience are not so strict because you have a very liberal upbringing. So it goes up. But sometimes certain people brought up in very strict ways are taught that certain things, relationship between men and women, are not proper. Or may they say it's even dirty to extreme. So they are taught this puritanical way. So that's they keep that and when they grow up and become adult, when they mix in society, they do come in conflict when they have a relationship with the opposite sex. Because this conscience pop up again, memory pops up, and they think a lot of these things are improper, and so they become a little bit stiff and a little bit. So these are conflicts which we have to be aware of in order to understand how the harmonious perspective should be looked at. You see, earlier on, I already told you, we are carried away by our emotions in the thing, and first we go after sense pleasure, I told you earlier on, and we do not see anything wrong with it. So we call it the expression, they call it the unconscious expression of sense pleasure. The other extreme is they suppress their emotions so great that they think they won't allow it to come up. So that one, they call it the suppression of their emotions. You see, suppressions, the unconscious suppression. So there is the letting your emotions go or suppressing your emotion. Now, I would like to use 2 or 3 examples to explain to you how our mind can think depending on situation. Now, there are a few stories which I can tell you, how your mind can change. Now, there is one occasion where, it's a story only, when one man, while waiting in the airport, he bought a box of chocolates, and then he decided to sit next to another man on the bench, left the chocolate in between, and then he decided to have the chocolate while waiting. But he didn't look at the bag. He just thought he flipped over and opened the box and took a piece of the chocolate and ate it. Then he noticed the man next to him put his hand into the box and took a piece. He took the second piece. That man took the second piece. He took the third piece. That man took the third piece. So he became quite irritated, you see, the way he thinks now, the interpretation of the situation. This person has got the cheek to take my chocolates and look at me and smile. Then it went on until there was one last piece left. So he told himself, now let me see whether this guy is going to take the last piece or not. True enough, the man next to him took the last piece. You know what he did? He broke the last piece, gave him half, and smiled. You see, this man got the cheek to do that. When this was all over, the man walked off, and he remained a seat. And after the man walked off, he looked into his bag and realized that he was putting his hand in the other person's box. His box was untouched. Within that moment, you can see how his mind changes. From being an angry, aggressive mind, he now realizes that he made the mistake. He changed. You see, he could see the difference. This is how So you see, sometimes when we are angry, we do not see other people's view. Now there is another story which Ajahn Brahm used to say in his book. He says, one man was sitting in the train, and then in front of the train was another man. And then he had 2 or 3 children. And these children were running all very unruly, running around. And the father doesn't seem to be bothered about it. So he just kept quiet. So the father got very angry. Not the father. The man was very angry. He said, what is this man doing? He doesn't seem to be very concerned about his children. They are making all the noise and nuisance of people. So he got very angry. You see, this is how he thinks at the moment. Then after a short journey, halfway the journey, he decided to talk to the gentleman and say, where are you going and where do you come from? You know what the man told him? I'm just going home. I just came from the hospital where my wife has just passed away. The moment he heard that, the whole situation he observed was altogether different. Completely different view to the situation. From being a very angry person looking at one view, and now he has changed his whole view when he realized that that man has just lost his wife. So you see? Now I will talk about this very popular story which have been related even in a lot of Sunday schools to the kids. It's a blind man and the elephant. But we got to look at it a little bit deeper. It's usually spoken as a parable, but we will look at it now from a different angle. You all know about this story, yeah? I gave you, it came from a certain part of the scripture. I gave you the number and the things, the Udana 68, 69. You see, this was a story about a king who was a bit bored. So he wanted some fun. What he did was, he ordered the royal elephant to be brought in. At the same time, he brought in a few blind men. These men were really blind from birth, and they had never seen an elephant before. Then each man was asked to touch one part of the elephant. And then they were asked to describe what the elephant was like. You see, a man touched the tail, and he said the elephant was like a broom. Then the next man touched the leg, and he said the elephant is like a tree. The third man touched the ear, and he says the elephant is like a fan. And the fourth person touched the tail, and he described the elephant as a snake, like a snake. Now, each one had a different, page 6, different view about the elephant. What I'm trying to emphasize here is the view of each individual. Each person had a different view, and they held on very strongly to the view. This person said, the elephant is like this. No. The other person said, the elephant is like this. And the third person said, no, it's like this. And they started arguing. And then the king, who was seated there, who could see the entire situation, because the king had the whole view of the elephant. He knew what the elephant was like. He had the different views, and he was laughing while these blind men were quarreling and fighting over whose view is right. That is the thing the point which I'm trying to drive home. Different views to the elephant. There are different views about what it is. But in actual fact, each person was right, Each person was actually able to describe what they experienced. Each person was able to describe exactly what they experienced. But unfortunately, they were not able to describe the whole elephant. That means the whole experience. They only had a part of it. So this is a story to tell you. Sometimes when you have an idea or a view, you should not be too autocratic and say, this is the view. We should listen to other people's view to the same thing. Give me your view. What do you think? So the story of this blind man and elephant is more than just blind men quarreling. It's actually trying to explain to you there are more than one view to a same thing. And this is exactly what the Buddha will do. He is able to see a situation from different perspective, and he never takes side. He does not quarrel with people. He is able to see it. He knows. He doesn't, you see. Now, then the other story is about the Siga Lowada Sutta, which I think some will do it. Either you have done it or you will do it. You see, but I would like to give you a different angle again. The Sivaloga Sutta is actually more about duties. What duties you should do and what other people will reciprocate with you. But here I would bring it into a different angle. You see, this sutta, for those who are new, I'll just give you a very short account. It's about a young man who has not been very obedient to his father. And the father was a little bit worried about him. Playful, mixing around, drinking, going to places of entertainment, coming back late. So he was about to die, This man was about to die. So the father one day asked his son and told him, now, I am going to die very soon, and after that, there will be no one to guide you. Now, this is what I want you to do, the father said. Every morning, you should take a bath in the river, and after that, you should pray, worship the 6 directions. North, east, south, west, the top and the lower part of Nader. So, very obediently, after the father had died, he does that every morning. This cleaning a person, the body in the river, is actually a custom in India. It's a custom. They feel that by immersing your body in certain holy places, the water, the whole body can be cleansed of sins. See, that's the belief. And then the other part is, the young man was taught to believe that when he prays to the 6th direction, he is praying to the gods in the various directions for help. Now, the Buddha, the other part of the story is, every morning, the Buddha will wake up, he will use his psychic power, look into the world, and see who needs his help. And then he will go and help the person. And in this case, he saw that this person needed his help. So he went, after his arms round, he went and met this young man. He asked this young man, why are you doing all these things? Bathing in the river, then praying in 6 directions. Then the Buddha explained to the young man, oh, you are doing that. But the Buddha said, I do not do that. I do purify my mind and body, but I do it in a different manner. So you see, the Buddha is able to read his mind. He is able to see different perspectives. He does not get into a quarrel with this young man and say, what you are doing is wrong. You should listen to what I am doing. He didn't. He said, for me, I do it this way. So the young man was a little bit curious. Then he asked the Buddha, what are your way of doing this? Then the Buddha replied and said, he does not bathe in the river to purify himself. The Buddha said, the way to purify the body, he explained to the young man, is not by rituals, rites and rituals, but by what? Is to stop harming life. Stop stealing. Stop committing sexual misconduct. Stop lying or make harsh speech. That is the way you cleanse yourself, purify your mind. Not by just bathing in the river or performing certain rituals. Remember yesterday I told you, rites and rituals, although are necessary for devotion, for your devotion and your faith, but they do not help you to end dukkha. You have to give up. You have to go beyond rites and rituals. So this is what the Buddha said. You have to perform certain positive action to purify your mind, and not just by rites and rituals. The word I gave you yesterday was Silabhata Paramasa, which is usually very sometimes mistranslated as rites and rituals. Silabhata Paramasa is actually to be able to see what is right and what is wrong, like understanding the precepts. Now the modern situation I gave you, this I think the young people will know, is about a perspective, different perspective, is I told you, a football match. When a referee makes a decision, the one team manager say, no, he did get it right, did get it wrong. The other said, I think so. Then the spectators, you see. And then they make an appeal. But today's with modern technology, with cameras, the camera is like an eye that's able not only to give you one, it's able to give you a various angle of the same incident. Different perspective. And when they use the camera and replay the actual situation, everyone can see what actually happened. But because they were looking at different sides, they had different views of the same thing. So this actually happens to us. It can happen to us in many situations. Husband and wife at home. Different views on how to solve a problem. Different views how to bring up their children. Different views on what is living. Whether you want to keep up with the Joneses, or you just want to live your own, by your own set of value or within your own means. So, because of these differences in views, we come into conflict. We come into conflict with the world. Now, that is a slightly different interpretation, as I said, from the traditional way of saying right understanding. Now, this is the traditional way. I come to it now. Page 7, usually in the conventional way, page 7, they ask you, what is right understanding? Right understanding is to understand the Four Noble Truths. You understand dukkha, the cause of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. Well, at the beginning, you need to understand this. But your understanding at the beginning of this Four Noble Truths, it's only an intellectual understanding. At the beginning. It's only the right understanding. It is only an intellectual understanding. Even the understanding of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactory, and non-self, is also intellectual. You have to complete the whole entire Eightfold Path. Then only, if you practice it properly and correctly, I say, then you will come back at the end of the eighth part, back to Sammaditthi. And this Sammaditthi is more than the intellectual level. By then, you are now able to see Sammaditthi at, you can call it the experiential level or emotional level. Emotional level. Actually, I use the word experiential more, but emotional also. You know why? At the beginning, we are able to see it. We can tell ourselves, there is no self. Well, this and this. So it's intellectually. Cognitive. You can see it cognitive. But from the emotional side or the affective side, you still have a feeling of a self. Although you tell yourself there's no self, no self, no self, emotionally, the self is still there. That is where you have the Vedana, feeling. And from Vedana, it leads to your clinging and your, you see, clinging. So, you have to experience, practice it, understand, practice the whole entire part. Then finally, you understand what is Sammaditthi. So basically, there are two angles of how we look at it. You understand this, but in order to understand the truth, we still have to understand the perspective. If you do not understand the perspective, we still do not see the realities in life, you see. We stick on to very rigid dogmatic views. So we have to be able to see all views, especially as you train yourself. Now you see, this part I think is a little bit difficult, so I would not want to waste time, but I'll just mention it casually. The last part, one paragraph in page 7, it says, you see, the conventional way of seeing things or understanding things is we see everything as existing. Things exist. And that's our normal way of thinking. There's the world, myself, me, and the world, and other things. That you call it the existential thinking. Huh? Everything exists. But if you go deeper into Buddhism, you'll find that this is not the right way of thinking. The Buddha pointed out that everything in the world is impermanent. They rise and they fall and they change. So, nothing remains. So, how can you call that an existence? It arises, and there's a rise, there's a fall. And you can only see that situation when you develop your meditation. Again, you can only see it when you practice your meditation. And when you are really ready, you can see that the whole world is in a state of flux. And what you really see are just the 5 aggregates of change. So he calls it, you can see the whole activity as an experience, a process of experience, rather than an existence. But this is a bit more abstract. I think you don't have to worry too much. All you need to see is this, that we as lay people, we see things as an existence, an existential way of looking things. That's our understanding. But it is actually not a very correct way of looking at things from the Buddhist point of view, the training. You have to change this way of this thinking to the experiential way of thinking. And this can only go about with meditation training, to see things as they come into being, So, actually, when you really understand dukkha, you understand how dukkha comes to being, you understand the impermanence of things in the world, then you will realize that when you can see these things, the impermanence of the world, you can see dukkha, you will realize that the unhappiness in you is not dukkha. The cause of all your unhappiness in this world is not dukkha. It's your attitude towards dukkha. How you take it, how you handle dukkha. The reality is there. But it's our inability to handle the reality in life. That is our problem in life. Now, the other one I don't think I need to explain to you is actually this, the samadhi of be able to see samadhi, the right perspective, is actually the existence of the self. The self, it's a very strong feeling, the ego in you. You see, in what I read here, at the higher level of understanding, samadhi means we have to stop thinking of existence and start thinking in terms of experience. It means we have to see things in their true nature without a name or label. It means we have to stop conceptualizing things. Now, it's very difficult for lay people to understand this or to do it. You see, what it means by you must see things in the true nature. You must not conceptualize it. A bit difficult. You know what I mean is, only a baby has got really a pure mind when they're doing it. You see, a baby, when he sees a dog, he doesn't know it is a dog. He only knows it's seeing. If a baby tastes sweet, he doesn't know it's sweet. He knows it's a pleasant taste. So the true nature of thing is the experience, not the concept or labeling of things. So when you are in that position, then you really see the impermanence of all the things. Rather, you do not create or conceptualize anymore. That's what it means. You see, it says here, at the higher level, we understand that the only reality is the process of experience and not that which is experienced. What it means here is, when you hear a sound, you do not call it a sound. You only know there is a hearing. Or the Buddhism, they say, in the hearing, it's just a hearing. Or in the seeing, it's just the seeing, not what is seen. Now, that's why this is the higher level of samadhi. That's why I don't think it's necessary for you. But all you need is to understand the Four Noble Truths for beginners and understand the different views of looking at things. So this is the other level, and I think with that I'll call it a night, because I don't want to confuse you with the other things. Just to sum up, as I said, samadhi is the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path. It helps you to get a right understanding of the path. And the main thing you need to understand is the Four Noble Truths and the three nature of existence, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. At the same time, when you look at it closely, you should be able to see the various views of things. It's not just understanding, but also a perspective to a thing. And very often, we fail to see the different perspective of something. We only see one perspective or one view. And when we get into that situation of sticking on to a view, we often come into conflict with others. We can come in conflict with society. We can come on conflict with the environment. We can also have conflicts within ourselves. So it is necessary to understand this before we can really understand what samadhi is. All right, I'll stop here. I don't want to make it too long. I know it's at night. I'll leave a little bit of time for questions. Any questions? You see, in other religions, they believe in the supernatural. That means mainly it is a creator or some superpower, supernatural powers beyond us. They are able to control the world, to create the world. The creator, usually the creator. But in Buddhism, we do not believe in a supernatural power. But we believe in a supernormal power. You see, what it means is we have a normal mind. And if you can really develop your mind and train it through meditation, the mind can be a very powerful mind. I'll talk about that, the next one, about the Buddhist mysticism, some of the powers you can get. They call it the abhinyas. It's not supernormal. I mean, it's not supernatural. It's supernormal because anyone who goes through that training can attain this. Not only Buddhist meditators. People in the East during the time of the Buddha have got these supernatural powers. Even his early teachers, the yogis, they have got it. So it's nothing very special about it. It's within everybody. It can be experienced. So that is, you see the slight difference there. Yeah. Bante calls it the Superman. It can be done. You see, like some of these people, they can read mind, they can see, they can read, they can see past life, they can see their past life, and so forth. They can see even how beings are being born, they die, reborn in the different world. I'll talk about that the next lesson.
Any more questions?
What happened is, I should have taken that sentence out because this, I did it the first. Actually, what I mean is, this is all about meditation. You see, as I said, that's why the question of why meditation. Meditation actually is to change your way of thinking. Rather than to pray to a super power or creator, you change your mind. You cultivate and you purify your mind. You purify your mind, and that is the Buddhist solution.
Okay, let's put our palm together and say sadhu 3 times together. Sadhu, sadhu.